Hello, folks, and welcome to another edition of Comics and Beyond. I am Cutter, joined by a frequent guest of this show and fellow Nerds Are Us member, Sir Foxington. Foxy, great to have you on board. And our very, very, very special guest joining us today is the man who wears many, many masks, man of many talents, an all-round cool guy. It's Kieran, Kieran Marcantonio.
I'm going to switch you for that one.
Yeah. Kieran, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us your precious time. And we're here to talk about, and I'm so fucking excited about this. Just to give you a little bit behind the scenes thing, I was told we had a choice of two things, and both, when were sent to me, I was just like, oh yes. Because both choices were fantastic. We settled on this one though, which is legitimately one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's The Crow. We're going to talk about the movie, but we're also going to talk about the comics, the TVs, all that stuff. Kieran is going to give us some great insight into that as well, much more in depth than I ever would, because Levin, which as I always do on the show, I like to be educated on this show, and while I do love the movie, the rest of it I'm not as far up on. So I suppose we'll start at the start here. Where did this kind of, I suppose, love of The Crow begin for you? Was it with like when you saw the movie? Was it like an instant thing, or was it
The movie was an instant thing, but it actually predates it by about a year. Where I first discovered it is, and I've told these kinds of stories before, I had two older brothers who were very much on the pulse of outsider and weird comics. These are the kind of brothers that would hand me 2000 AD, that would hand me Evil Ernie, things like that.
Oh, okay, all right.
One of those days when I was about 11, 12, maybe 13, I discovered a copy of the Caliber Press cutting of The Crow sitting in my house, the comic book, and I started reading it. And it was definitely one of those comics I was way too young to read, and it left an influence on me. Now, I couldn't see the movie when it came out because, no 14, 15-year-old kid in 94 is getting in to see a movie. But when I did eventually get to see it, I believe it was a pirated video copy. I fell in love with it immediately. The aesthetic of it, the mystery of it, the look of it, and the fact that it advertised itself as darker than the Bat. And at the time, you have to think back to the time that
there wasn't nothing like it.
No.
Nope.
Independent comic books did not get major motion pictures at this time. I can count on one hand the amount of movies and pictures that came out at this time. And I'm going to draw a very strange comparison here because they shared a lot of sets and not a lot of people know about it. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 1990 live action film, and The Crow. Watch them in an evening together, and you'll be surprised by some of the things you see.
Yeah. Really?
A lot of repeat sets.
Shot from different angles, filming tones.
Saving some money, reusing sets. Very, very smart. Very smart.
Which was down to, there was a lot of comparisons at the time between the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic and the Crow comic for its independent nature, its black and white aesthetic, and the fact that both were dealing with darker things than comics normally did. Now, Turtles took a big turn.
That
turn.
And that's look. This is something I was going to bring up. Like this, and again, for viewers or stuff who may be younger. I mean, now of course the big thing is turning things dark and gritty. Well, The Crow was dark and gritty before that was a thing. For superhero movies, like. It's kind of the originator of that, the anti-hero, who's I suppose there's no altruistic motivation. It's vengeance.
It's vengeance, but with a certain angelic quality to it.
Yes.
There's a deliberately ambiguous choice in The Crow.
That's right.
Where did The Crow come from? Does it come from heaven? Does it come from hell?
Is it in his head?
Is it in
This
his
is the
head?
thing, is a psyche.
Um,
And this is the thing, to give people who may not be familiar, firstly, if you're not familiar with The Crow, go watch it. You just won't regret it. It's just one of those movies. I've never heard somebody say they dislike it. Some people
mm,
will say, oh, it's okay, and some people will love it,
mm.
but I've never heard people say they dislike it. Okay,
That's
so
very true, actually. Yeah.
but to give you a quick synopsis, and as with all our podcasts, if you don't want spoilers, don't. But you know what? This was released in '94. Jesus Christ, right? Okay, you know.
Yeah, I think
No,
we're
we have
way past like spoilers.
a comic book from 1989 and a movie from
Yeah,
1994. I'm sure some of
exactly.
your viewers weren't even born then, so
Exactly.
it's okay.
So it follows the story of Eric Draven. He's the lead in it. He's engaged to be married, to be wed. He's all happy, everything, and basically his fiance ends up murdered.
Mhm.
And I'm going off memory here, so please do correct me if I'm correct. Ends up murdered. Or no, sorry, his fiance is not end up murdered. Sorry, he gets killed. If I'm correct.
What happens is on the night of the night before their wedding, the night before, which is Devil's Night, the night before Halloween.
Yes, Devil's Night.
Their apartment is broken into by some enforcers for the local gang that are controlling rents in the area, and they are forcing evictions. And Eric and Shelley have been fighting this eviction and are essentially, Shelley is raped and murdered, and Eric is murdered for their pleasure, for their
Yes.
for their looking to stand up for what was right. And this 1 year later, on the anniversary,
Yep.
Eric is resurrected to set the wrong things right. Now, from there, go ahead, dude.
Well, that's when he starts his quest for vengeance. You're
Mhm.
left in the movie. It's very much it's a literal crow that kind of he sees and kind of guides him along his way, and it goes down that route as his path for vengeance. In the comics, I think it's more debatable. It's psyche based, I think.
There is in the comics there is a slight difference, and it's a very obvious difference in that the crow actually speaks to him.
Right.
The crow actually has a narrative. The crow actually directs him towards people and directs him towards those, and informs him what his mission is and why he is there. And that element of it is always up for debate in almost, I should say that, like, in comic books, Eric Draven was the first, but certainly not the last crow. And the narrative question of where these crows are coming from has always remained ambiguous. And I think that that's a very interesting part of it, because it allows people to attach their own beliefs onto it, which allows it to transcend into, like, like, given what I've been working on recently, in the form of Vikings Valhalla, I've been noodling around in my brain. Jesus, it'd be really cool if you did a story where the idea or the legend of Odin came about because of a man who was resurrected, lost an eye, and had two birds. Like, you can take the crow mythology and insert it into almost any religion by
and I
keeping
think
that ambiguous.
a lot of people connected with it too, because look, everybody loves a good justice story.
A good justice story, a good love story.
Yeah.
I've heard, a lot of people that are hardcore crow community people like myself, think of it genuinely as one of the greatest love stories of all time.
I'd find it hard to argue with you, honestly. There's some genuinely touching moments in it.
Truly.
And it has everything you want. Look, if you're a metalhead, Dimebag does the guitar solo on it, where he's playing the guitar overlooking the thing. It's so cool. If you're a wrestling fan, Sting got his inspiration for his face paint, and how he acted when he first came back was directly from Eric Draven in The Crow. It's inspired lots of things.
I love Sting, and I've met Sting, and I've been like, dude. But like, I've never in my life seen. I know wrestlers often lift gimmicks from movies in sometimes subtle ways. Sorry. Sting was not subtle.
No, this was not subtle in the slightest.
No, that was very obvious. No, it was a complete lift, but it worked, and that's the thing. But that movie, it resonated with a lot of people. This was not like some indie-rific movie. Like this This was a big deal,
Yeah,
you
it was
know,
one of
and
the
it went on to be a true cult classic.
yeah
Um,
for a lot of reasons.
yeah, for many reasons. But inherently, it's just a good movie. And I mean, honestly, again, if you haven't seen, it, you should. But to go a little bit into the history of it,
Yeah.
which we touched on briefly, was that it was written in about 81 by
Hmm.
James O'Barr,
Yeah.
um, who he was in the Marines, and he
Hmm.
kind of he wrote this. Um, Drawing for some personal experience and from also from stories he had read about a couple murdered over a $30 engagement ring, and he just thought, what a waste of life. And
Hmm.
that was kind of his focal point. That's what he said in a kind of an interview about it. And
Hmm.
apparently early on in 80, the comic book debuted in 89, but
That's right. Yeah.
apparently very very early on he was offered, like way before 94, he was offered to do a movie.
Mm.
And it was like he was going to be a lump sum payment, and he said it was a pretty generous amount, but he was going to hand over all
Everything.
copyright to it.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until he kind of spoke to an agent that they told him, no, 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 you hold on. And that's it. Ended up he got another offer for the movie he got, and he was very thankful because it got to be more along the lines of his vision, I believe. Like he got to have a little bit more input, and he got
Yeah.
to maintain
An
a
element of
franchise that was
creative
close
control.
to him. You know, he was writing
Yeah.
from his own personal thing. You know, he didn't want to just give it away, I suppose. But you probably, as I said, you probably know far more about Mr. O'Barr's inspirations and
Okay.
where he went with it. But I
Here we
mean,
go.
fantastic.
Foxy, mark the time. I'm doing it. I'm gonna drop it. Yes, I do in fact know James O'Barr, and I have interviewed him a number of times myself. And
Wow.
it's dude, it's one of those things where I'm so grateful to know the guy and to get to speak to him every now and again. And he's a true legend. He
And a
took his own
fascinating character from the sounds of
absolutely.
things.
He took his own personal tragedy and took his own personal feelings and bled them onto the page,
Yeah.
in a very raw, very emotional fashion.
As I
So,
believe a way of therapy for himself, he kind of put it. Yeah.
um, if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that all comics writers are self-therapizing and we all need help. Um, that's something I've learned. See that face the Foxy's making? He's
I
trying
think we
to.
could say the same for the rest. I think we could say the same for the wrestling industry, Foxy. I think we're all damaged a bit.
Yeah, we're all a bit out there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we're just gonna leave it
What
at
are
that.
you
Silly
hiding,
Oh,
Foxy?
thought.
What
I'm
are you
staying quiet on
hiding?
that one. I'm
What
staying
are you-
quiet on that one because I know exactly where he's going with it. So,
Listen, we're all there. But anyway, the Crow to me became something very personal because when I first saw the Crow, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of a family member who had passed away, and it was a big stepping stone for me in learning as a teenage person how to grieve, and how to accept that somebody else is gone. And I kind of adopted that into my life. Pretty much every decade of my life, I've gone through some sort of loss in my family, and I've always gone back to the Crow as a way of dealing with it, as a way of legitimately looking at grief and love and all of the pain that comes with it, um, and expressing that in a creative fashion that allows you to kind of say goodbye to a person in the
Mm.
form of writing. And I think I've very much so. I've having read as much Crow work as I have, and having looked at as many Crow movies as I have, and read the books and watched the TV series and all of that, that element remains true in all of it. It really is. If it can be received one way, or at least received how I've received it, it's a lesson on grief and love. That these two things do go on. And love sometimes outlives grief, and grief sometimes outlives love. And all of these, it's very, very human
Yeah.
at the core of it. And I think that's what resonates most with people.
Yeah,
And
it doesn't pull a lot of punches,
no,
that kind of way. It doesn't softball you stuff,
no,
which
certainly
I
doesn't.
think is
And
appreciated.
yeah, I mean, you could the character of Eric Draven, quite literally in the comic book, specifically, less so in the movie. And I think that that's an element of the tragedy that did happen, in that Brandon did lose his life during the course of making the film, and therefore the film had to be cut in such a way where certain sequences were taken out of it. We still got a complete film, and we were very lucky to get a complete film.
Yes.
But I do often wonder, of course, what could have been there. But a lot of what could have been there is there in the comic book. So you can take from that what you will. But Eric literally goes through the stages of grief in each issue. You know, that's how the
Wow.
book was
Okay.
formatted. That's literally how the book was formatted. So that each issue of the comic is Eric experiencing a different form of, the stages of grief.
Okay.
Finally getting to acceptance and returning to the afterlife to see Shelley.
Mm.
And while committing these acts of vengeance against those who murdered him. The basic structure of both the movie and the comic are exactly the same. That story is exactly the same. You just, as with all things, I suppose, when you get a book or a comic um, that's adapted into a film, certain parts have to be lost in that translation. That's always going to be the way.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's that word
It's a,
adaptation.
a necessary evil, I suppose.
It is. But for me, I've always seen the Crow movie and the Crow's original comic and graphic novel as kind of two sides of the same coin. And like I can't express how much if you are a fan of the movie, or even if you become a fan of the movie, seek out the comic book, the original comic book.
I was
And
just
there are
going to
many,
ask, in your
yeah,
opinion, how does the movie relate to the comic? Is it faithful as
it's
much as you
faithful
can
to a
be?
degree. It's
Okay.
faithful to a degree. There's one key sequence that is missing, and it's a very famous sequence, which is um, the Skull Cowboy sequence. The Skull Cowboy is kind of seen by the Crow when the Crow goes off his path, as in, when the Crow is going that extra step to save Sarah,
Mhm.
which is kind of outside of the remit of
Uh,
the people that
of the
attacked him.
vengeance of what he's meant
Yeah.
to be doing. Yeah.
Uh, in the original version of the Crow film, it would have been depicted that it was the Skull Cowboy who took his powers away in that moment, and not the shooting of the Crow that does it.
Okay.
The shooting of the
Okay.
Crow that does it in the film was very much so a film mechanic that was necessary because they hadn't completed the sequence that would have explained why Eric was going into this with those
Right.
abilities.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
So, there are elements like that are clearly explained in the book. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
during it's done differently. The Skull Cowboy is introduced as every now and again in the book. Eric will flash into a train sequence, almost as if it's like the train to or from the afterlife. And the person who's checking the tickets is the Skull Cowboy. And Eric's having conversations with him about what is right to be done in the world and what is wrong to be done when you've returned. Essentially, the role would have been the same. The Skull
Hmm.
Cowboy being the one to direct him whether he should or shouldn't do this, and if he's going to do this, then you don't get any of the extra special abilities that you get to use. You do this with only
Okay.
what you have, and that element of it. Jesus, I feel like we consistently, whenever we get together, we talk about studios editing shit, and um, and it becoming a worse product as a result. Here we go. Dimension and New Line. It's a very different case in that the actor who was playing the lead role had passed away. They had to use a body double to complete the sequences. There was one of the crowning achievements of CGI was to replace Brandon's face in a number of sequences onto that of a body double to allow the film to be completed in the form that it was. So I don't really. There's no director's cut of The Crow out there because that footage doesn't, in a completed form, doesn't exist.
Yeah. Of
Uh,
course.
but I have been privy to the original script, and I have read the original scripted sequences and how it would have played out. And I think it's very interesting that in the world of movies and comics, there's always going to be that element for me of a movie will give you a certain thing that you want to see, and it'll be really good and you'll enjoy it. And if you want extra depth to it, go back and read the comic. Or reverse, if you really love a comic and then see a film, sometimes you will see things in that film that are a deeper experience for you because you've read the comic. Crow has one really good example of that. And it's something that not a lot of people point out. And so I'll point it out here, and you can watch for it in the future. In the comic book, for each killing that he would do, he would take a bullet and tie it in his hair, right? So he
Right.
kills Tintin. He kills
T-Bird.
T-Bird. Thank you, Fun
Fun
Boy,
boy.
Skank, Top Dollar. As he would kill these characters in the book, he would tie a bullet in his hair. And if you actually go and look in the movie, you never see him do it. But by the end of the film, he has 4 bullets in his hair. And
Right. I never
if
copped
you
that.
and if you pause it just right in a couple of scenes, you'll see that the scar across his eye and nose, which people often deride as not being there, is actually there, and it's become more prominent in the HD age. You can
Mhm.
actually see it, but like little details from the book, things that happened in scenes in the book that may
Yes.
have happened in between scenes in the film did happen. You know, that kind of
So
idea.
it's still staying true to it. Just they couldn't show maybe as much as they wanted due to time constraints that come
Time
with movies,
constraints.
etc.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can't everything can't be a goddamn Snyder cut. But touching on the movie itself, it was apparently the producers knew exactly who they wanted to direct the movie, and they knew who they wanted to star as Eric Draven as well.
Hmm.
And the thing about these was, Alex Proyas
Hmm.
is the director. I
Director.
may be mispronouncing his name, and I do apologize.
No, you nailed
Um,
it.
but and now he had only done like music videos
Yeah, at
and
that point.
commercials at that time. But
Mhm.
apparently, there was he was kind of waiting for the right project, and so he signed on to the Crow in 1991. That was going to be his first big feature film, and likewise for Brandon Lee, he had done some parts,
Mhm.
but he wasn't kind of he wasn't mainstream yet.
No.
And but they knew that they wanted him. He
Mhm.
had the correct look for who they wanted for Eric Draven. He had the chops and everything for it. I mean, as casting goes, just top dollar casting
Nailed it.
there. I mean, he's
Yeah.
fantastic. Um,
Mhm.
and that would have been that launching pad for him. You have to believe, because it was such a great movie, and he does such a stellar performance in it. Sadly, of course, that was cut short uh, via an accident. On the set, which I'm not going to spend too much time talking about, because as I met,
No.
that's been talked to death. But
Mhm.
we did touch on that there is a lot of misconceptions about that, and
Mhm.
I believe, Kieran, you have a great resource that people could go to see, uh, you know,
Mhm.
the reality of it, and
Yeah.
if you'd like to just direct them there.
Sure, man. There was an if anybody has the Shudder horror service, it's Netflix for horror movies. On Shudder, there is a documentary series called Cursed Films, and in that series, I think it's episode 2 or episode 3, they cover the Crow, and in that episode, they basically break down exactly what happened. None of the conspiracy theories, none of the sensationalization that went on, um, none of the crazy that came along with it. It just gives you the facts,
Yeah.
and they are sad facts, they are tragic facts, but they are facts. And if the mystery of what happened to Brandon Lee on the set of The Crow is something that does fascinate you, and you wish to know the actual facts of what happened, I would definitely recommend that episode of Cursed Films, because it breaks it down in a very straight. It's not a nice story, it's not a fun story, but it is a true story, and that's kind of the best way I can say to
Yeah. So
to
look, in this show, we don't want to dwell too much on that. As I said,
God,
lots of
yeah.
people have talked about it. We were going to more look at the kind of lasting effect that he had, and the movie had in itself, and more joyous things like
Yes.
that. And how, given it was a feat to get the movie out
Hmm.
at all, and let alone to that standard.
Yeah.
And again, I can't stress enough that you should go. But we'll take a little trip from here into the comic book world
Oh, now you're
for
talking
it.
my language.
So Crow's published by Caliber Comics, Image Comics,
Caliber
and
Comics,
IDW, I do believe.
IDW. I have very, very much love for the Caliber original books.
Hmm.
I have less of a love for the Image Comics books. And I have so much praise to heap on the IDW stuff that it's crazy. I'll give you some quick rundowns, all right, because these can get, I could have you here for a few hours if you really want to talk about this stuff. So I'll just try and hit the basics, all right. So 1996, the first sequel to The Crow in comic book form is called The Crow Dead Time, and it's
Mhm.
written by John Wagner of 2000 AD Judge Dredd fame.
Yeah.
It In this case, this story begins to really break the time barrier when it comes to crows. In that this is very much so a Western crow story, but it also plays in the modern day because in this case, the crow, a guy named Joshua, um, Native American, is killed by a bunch of cowboys simply in an act of racism with his loved one, with his partner, and is resurrected not a year later, but 100 years later,
Wow.
um,
Okay.
to kill the reincarnations of these same killers who have now formed into a vicious biker gang. So you have a
Hey,
classic Native American tomahawk wielding crow running around in the modern world hunting down a gang of bikers.
that's
It's
kind of
badass.
badass. That's kind of
It's
badass.
badass.
Yeah.
It's pretty badass. Flesh and Blood, which came out in 1996, featured the first female crow. And in this case, it was the story of a character who was murdered, but she was murdered while pregnant. And the loved one that she lost was the child she never had. So she came back to seek vengeance for her unborn child.
This is
Iris
what we
was
were
her
talking
name.
about, folks.
Yeah.
Incredibly dark. It's incredibly
Oh
dark.
yeah.
You know.
Oh
You
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah. And she in particular was the first one to change the makeup style.
Mhm.
Um, the the makeup of each crow kind of changes to adapt to whichever type of character
And
it really
am I
is.
correct in saying that Draven's makeup? I know there was a lot of rumors saying it was modeled off of Kiss. No, from what I know, it
No,
was off a marionette mask. Is that correct?
it's the duality of comedy and tragedy.
Yes.
Quite literally, if there are two, and what's often confused is that he picks up one mask in the film, but there are actually two masks in the apartment, and the
Mm,
masks are comedy and tragedy. And the one that he models his face on is tragedy, because of what has happened to him. Symbolically,
mhm.
he's putting his tragedy on his face. Um, with the second crow, Joshua, being a Native American Indian, well, they wore war paint, didn't they?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's very easy for him to just, he does a simple two lines down the face on the
Okay.
back. Like each character's makeup changes, but keeps the black and white
Which I
mostly.
actually really like because it gives an individuality to it as well. You
Exactly.
know.
The character of Iris has always been one of my favorites because she's just a long, uh, raven-haired woman, and she simply, literally, just paints a crow over her. That classic shape of the crow just
Yes.
goes around her eyes,
Oh.
and I, I just particularly liked that design of her. So for that one, where we up to, we're up to Flesh and Blood, yeah. So the Crow Flesh and Blood was Iris. That was 1996. Then you get to the Crow Wild Justice, and Wild Justice is insane. It's probably one of the more it's probably one of the more insane of the Crow books. I actually want to look up the artist on this one because it was the first one not drawn by a
And just
what
as you're going there, I was looking up some of
yeah
these ones about Iris and all that as well.
yeah
She did so that was a 3-issue series. Is that right?
yeah
Flesh and
that
Blood.
was
That was
yeah, it was a 3 issue series. They all generally clock in around 3 to 4 to 5 issues
yeah.
max. They kind of vary in they would only release one series every couple of years, and generally it became known for the fact that James himself wasn't writing any of these sequels. He was licensing them out to others to do.
I,
And
could I ask about Iris? There
sure,
seemed to be a little difference there in that. So part of the Crow is that he can kind of heal
yeah,
and do all that stuff, but Iris couldn't
no,
heal.
no.
She stapled herself together and stuff, and
She became
there's another part where she's told that according to the Crow, she has to complete her mission before she rots, basically.
mhm.
If I'm correct
And
there,
this is because Iris was when Iris died, her body was desiccated, completely desiccated.
Okay.
She was killed in an explosion. There was no body. So in that case, she had to be brought back from nothing, and thus
Right.
that was what caused
So it was
her in
different
that particular case to
circumstances,
differ.
whereas the other ones were okay. I get it. I get it.
Yeah, there's a couple of the different series. I was going to get to this one in a minute, but Waking Nightmares, the Crow Waking Nightmares,
Mm-hmm.
deals with a police officer, um, and this is where this one's really dark. All right, wife is killed, children, two daughters are taken into a sex performance ring. All right, he comes back from the dead, but in before he died, he lost his eyes. His eyes were thumbed out. You know
Oh,
that all
Ouch.
right. So his makeup is literally just his bleeding eye sockets, right?
Jesus
He wears
Christ.
he wears a pair of sunglasses and can only see through the eyes of the crow.
Right. Okay.
You know the crow vision that's developed over
Mm.
time through different stories.
Yeah.
For him, it's particular. He can only see through the eyes of the crow. He's an Asian police officer as well, so he does two particular. He takes a bottle of Tipex, and on the sunglasses that he has, he um, paints the symbols for love and death. Um, so he's got these black sunglasses, white Tipex over them, and the blood lines coming down from his empty eye sockets. And that design is chef's kiss
Yes.
in my
Yeah.
mind when it comes to this guy. Back to Wild Justice though. That in that particular case, the guy who
Mm.
was killed is a tattoo artist, and
Okay.
he was already covered head to toe in tattoos, and just the natural inclination of his tattoos kind of gave the effect. And they've done this in movies as well. Like with each version of the Crow that they've done in the films. Um, Ash Corvin, who was the Crow in the Crow 2,
Hmm.
well, his face was painted by Sarah from the first Crow. So that's
Yep.
where she took her inspiration from. Um, Alexander Corvus in The Crow 3, um, he is electrocuted in the electric chair for the murder of his girlfriend, which he didn't commit. And the electric chair mask actually has lines going up and down to the eyes and up and across to the mouth. That's a thing that happens. That's real. So for him, his markings are burned onto his face in death, and it creates when he heals for the first time and peels away the flesh. There's just these burn marks from top to bottom and from left to right that kind of give the indication of the crow.
Mm.
But with each version of it that's existed and each iteration that comes out, they always find a way to keep the black and white look, but personalize it to the character and make it something meaningful from within their story. And that to me is a really good way to keep this going and to keep it going. And now that we've gotten through most of the kitchen sink and caliber press comics there, so let me
There was a
see.
couple like there's also like there's one I've heard of that was a crossover as well with Razor,
Oh,
I
you want to
think as
bring up the
well.
Crow Razor and Kill the Pain?
Kill the Pain.
Oh, that was a dark, dark book.
Yeah, this is what I've heard
Um,
in '98. So if you're not aware of Razor,
yeah, yeah,
an equally dark character,
yeah,
female superheroine
yeah,
who's kind of marked by the loss of, I believe, her father and her sister.
yeah.
I think.
And Foxy is googling her right now.
Yeah,
No joke. That actually popped up just as you said it. I was like,
There it is.
yeah, yeah.
Crow
That's
Razor, Kill the Pain.
called Razor for the blade she wears on her hands slash wrists.
Yeah,
As I said,
and it's interesting because it's a pseudo sequel. That one takes place is the only other story to contain Eric Draven
I was
and
just going to
takes
say it's
place
it's the only
as
one that has Eric Draven in it besides the original one.
yeah, and is the second resurrection of Eric Draven. And
Yes.
this time Eric has come back wrong. Has just come back wrong is the best way to put it. And it's one of those ones where it's like Jesus, it really was Rory. Peak 90s hardcore comics. All right. So it's boobs, it's blood, it's big guns, it's tacky one-liners, it's all of that shit. It is the guilty pleasure 90s comic of Crow Comics. Um because it absolutely falls into that weird, over the top, trying to be extreme comics. Whereas the original Crow didn't need to do any of that, if you know what I
No.
mean. It was, but it was for fun. It was definitely a fun book.
Yeah, I think so, because it also felt a little shoehorned, because it was saying that Draven couldn't rest, which is why he had to come back again, because as well, like firstly he was helping Razor defeat this demonic gang called Pain, and but essentially he
Hence
has to
kill the pain.
yes, very 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 original, on the nose, but basically before he could finally cross over, which we all thought he did in the original. That's why I was saying it felt a touch shoehorned, was that he essentially had to face up to the fact that he blamed himself for not being able to save Shelley.
Yeah.
So he had to kind of
deal with his own
accept it
shit.
wasn't his fault before he could kind of properly cross over.
That's kind of the deal with it. Crow fans kind of ignore that one
Yeah.
a little bit.
But as you said, it was
and-
more of a fun thing,
Yeah, it is more of a fun thing. It is interesting to know that there was a sequel planned where Shelley returned instead of it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, interesting. Could you go into a little detail on that? Because I hadn't
I
heard
can
that
go
one.
you one better, mate.
Oh,
Yes,
this-
concept art.
God, give me a second. This is going to be real slapstick for the moment, but I don't know if you can see that.
oh, we can.
That's about as far as I can get.
That's Shelley in a wedding dress, I do believe.
And to the right of her
Is Eric?
Shelley. No, that's Shelley as a crow.
Oh,
Wow. Okay. Wow. Look at that.
Yep.
Okay, this was definitely the correct subject to choose for you. He is the goddamn concept art for unreleased stuff on his wall.
Dude, I literally have two of the only props that exist from the Crow 2037, the Rob Zombie movie that was going to happen.
Oh, I was going to touch on it
yeah.
because I'm a huge zombie fan, Rob Zombie fan. I absolutely adore Zombie, and I have since I was a teenager. I just loved it, right?
Yeah.
So by default, I have loved most of his movies. I love House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Reject. I love them. But the thought of him doing a Crow movie, it set my little heart all pitter patter. Do you want
to go one step further? Do you want to know who fucking wrote the script?
Go ahead.
Nick Cave.
Oh my God.
Nick Cave. The concept was of a character who came back from the dead, but didn't know he was a crow, and just continued to live his life until he encounters one of the people. He can't remember his previous life, and
so he's just like back with like amnesia or something like that kind of thing. Yeah.
And one day encounters someone from his previous life. The memories come flooding back, and he goes on a killing spree looking for the people. Blah blah blah. It was a dark as fuck script, but to think that at one time we could have gotten a Nick Cave script for a Rob Zombie film about the Crow, that just sounds like the most depressing and metal thing possible. Like, all of them go.
It would, it would be so violent as well. My God, it would be so violent. Like, it would be gory as all fuck. I'm telling you right now, it would be. So I'm going to go through some of the characters here, and I thought it might be interesting, Kieran, to kind of, I suppose, rate them and where you think, cool. In kind of order of your obviously it's your personal preference, but and so I'm going to
talk to Foxy because he's just sitting here.
Yeah, I do apologize. I'm sorry. I'm just finding it really interesting picking Kieran's brain. I'm very sorry, Foxy. I probably should have.
No, this is fun because I'm learning about this as well. So I'm actually. Really
I'm presuming you've watched the movie, and I'm presuming
I've watched the 4 movies.
Yes.
And yeah, that
last one, eh?
Wicked Prayer. I hate it. Edward Furlong.
Yeah. Edward Furlong, Dennis Hopper, and David Boreanaz.
I kind of don't want to talk about it.
I will say that it was the one time watching a Crow movie where I genuinely got an absolute total 100% belly laugh with Edward Furlong's proclaiming, "Quoth the Raven nevermore, motherfucker."
Yeah. Like to me, that was just a rapid departure, like
Oh,
from what I
God.
was, and I was just like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
at least with the other two films after the
Yeah.
original, they kind of tried to keep like as close to it as possible. But like this one was just like copy paste.
City
And
of Angels got butchered by the editors. Butchered, I tell you.
Look, guys,
Mm.
if you're watching this, and you're thinking about it, just start with Brandon Lee. All right, start with that Crow. You don't have to go from there if you don't want to. That is an amazing movie. You can view
Stay
the
with the
other
gold
ones if you
standard.
want, but
Stay
that
with the
is,
gold standard.
in my personal opinion, they don't get better than that one.
They don't.
No.
And but honorable mention given to Mark Dacascos for
Fair.
playing for taking on the role of Eric Draven and
Fair.
attempting to make it into a serialized thing.
A daunting task
Mm-hmm.
for anybody. So
Mhm.
I do agree. Props for even
Props to
attempting.
Coscos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in order of preference, we'll obviously start with Eric Draven.
Number one. Without
You know,
number one with a bullet. Number one with a bullet. Eric
That's-
Draven.
that's I expected that. I mean, it's Eric fucking Draven. A little interesting fact for you and for other people as well. When I originally wanted to become a wrestler, so for those who don't know, I decided to become a wrestler very, very late in my life. I was 32 when I decided I wanted to be a wrestler. I've always wanted to be one, but life happened and whatnot. But I was very late getting to the party. My original idea for a name was Draven. Very original name.
I
Dropped
approve
it
of this.
because of friend of the show, Raven Creed, had just had just begun to really make a name for herself at the time, and that was
What can you do?
So so Joshua Zane.
Joshua Zane from Dead Time.
That's correct. Yes.
I have a special place in my heart for Joshua because he was the first Crow other than Eric. And
that's right. He was the immediate successor. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of, it's kind of where the story needed to go, because how do you serialize this concept? And I think that's where a lot of the movies tried to suffer as well, is that in serializing the Crow concept, you need to make it work in different environments with different characters in different times and different settings.
You almost need to keep them completely separate, apart from the one connection, and that's the Crow itself. But other than that, completely different.
And this is what I was going to say when it comes up to IDW's more recent run of comics, which actually feature James O'Barr as a creator again. That's exactly what they're doing now.
Yeah.
And I love that. But Joshua, I mean, you're asking me to pick among favorite kids here, man.
I know. I like to be cruel on this show.
I'll put him. I'll put him number two.
We can shift him around. We can shift him around if we wish. Okay.
Yeah.
Foxy, would you like to make note of the order that we're going in at the moment? Because I do have quite a few of these.
I shall try. Bear with me one moment. I'll start making.
Just for the crack. It's only for fun.
Yeah.
So at the moment we have Eric Draven number 1, followed by Joshua Zane number 2, and then of course we go to Iris Shaw, who we know you have a soft spot for.
Iris, dark story. What do I put? Foxy. All right, yeah. Iris Shaw number 2, Joshua number 3.
Okay, fair enough.
For Foxy.
Fair enough. We're then going to move up to Wild Justice. And we're into Michael Corby.
Corby. So just remind me of the numbers there.
Eric number Draven. 1 is Eric Draven. Number 2 is Iris Shaw. And number 3 is Joshua Zane. You could just put Zane. Michael Corby, so he's in the 3-issue series, Well, I've decided I'm going to give a little background, a little quick synopsis of each one.
Go
So,
for it. Yeah,
he and his wife are murdered during a carjacking. He's brought back by two crows named Hugo and Manny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and he has to avenge his and his wife's death before
Mm-hmm.
the Gorgon blood.
That's the one I was talking about where shit got a bit crazy.
Yeah, where it goes a bit mental, running through his veins, run out. Basically, the Gorgon god tattoos Michael's body, which gives him the power to regenerate until that Gorgon blood runs out, essentially, and that's when he will pass on again. So, Michael Corby in the Crow mythos, where would you put him? Last. Okay, because it just went too off the rails for you. Fair enough.
By trying to tie it to Greek mythology in the form of the Gorgon's blood. Gorgon, in case you don't know, was also the inspiration for, say, Medusa, who would turn people to stone with her stare.
Yes.
By tying the crow into any particular mythology, it takes away from that element of ambiguous mythology for me. So that's
almost of connecting it to the everyman as well. It kind of gets rid of that little connection. So yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
So he'll be going last. We're up then to the Crow Waking Nightmares with Mark Lung or Leung. But he and his wife are murdered by the Chinese mafia, and instead of going after the killers, Mark returns to save his twin daughters, who the mob have sold into slavery. So where would you place Mark?
Sex slavery. Let's be very clear.
Yes, sex slavery. Remember, this is ultra dark, folks.
Every time the Crow thinks it's gone dark enough,
it'll go darker.
I'm quite fond of that one. That one particularly brought her in the idea, as I said, of eyes being gone and using the Crow vision. It brought a new visual storytelling element to it that was underdeveloped before. I'll put him number 4.
Nice. Okay. We are then up to the French Crow.
What was the name of that?
That was Mark Lung or Leung. Yeah. I'm not good. Yeah. Leandre.
This is where we start getting into the books and
yes. Oh, we're going the whole way here, boy. Basically, this was published in France in 2007. It's a two-part in the two-part story, Medieval Crow. Leandre and his wife Jean are murdered, and their son Lestal is kidnapped on the orders of Lord Arturo, who is seeking an heir. Leandre achieves his vengeance and eventually kills Arturo, but accidentally kills his son as well, Lestal. After his son's death, Leandre is then abandoned by his spirit crow, and he has to wander the earth until he learns the true reason for his restless wandering. So a very different take there, where he's almost punished.
It is in that, and this is a very interesting thing in that was the original ending to the Crow City of Angels.
Really? Now that I didn't know. Wow. Okay.
In the Crow City of Angels, in the original cut, I'm not going to tell you how I know any of this. But in the original cut, it was a case of Sarah sacrificing herself to cross over, therefore allowing Ash to stay behind and fight and to take out Judah Earl, who had now become an incarnation of multiple crows. And the idea being that Ash now had to wander the earth, and Sarah, who is his true love, would wait for him in the afterlife until his time on earth serving out justice. That was another way they were attempting to serialize it.
Wow. Okay.
But they didn't.
Of course, that would have left it open. You could do anything you wanted from there. Yeah, exactly. Of course, that makes sense.
But the scene at the end of The Crow 2 is actually re-edited from the original scene, where you see him driving away on a motorbike, and then they insert a scene with him running across the water into what supposedly is heaven with his son. Those two scenes were actually placed in different orders in the original cut, and the final scene of the film simply would have been Ash just riding his motorcycle out of Los Angeles, cursed to continue to walk, but with no assistance from anyone from the afterlife. And in that respect, I loved that story. It took the ending that I thought would have been a much better ending and transferred it into a medieval setting and made it tragic and made it everything a kind of Knight's Tale tragedy should be.
Mm.
Um, does that elevate it above others? No, we'll put it at 5. We'll put it at 5 for
Okay,
now.
fair
And
enough.
give
And
me
that
the total
was
number so I know what we're working with
Actually,
here.
that's a good point. Let me give you a total number. That's a very good point.
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15.
Fuck. Yeah. Go to work, Foxy.
Apologies, I should have given that at the start. That's my fault.
So
Sorry,
number
where
5
would you?
was
Leandre. So
Leandre.
Leandre.
Mm.
Next up, we're going to French Crow again. We're going
They
volume
love it in
4.
France. They love it in France.
Yeah. This is the story, and I'm so sorry because I'm gonna butcher this. It's La Fiancée de Corbeau, which is Bride of the Crow. This is Vincent. So Vincent is a young makeup artiste in the 30s. So this is where we touched on before, going different which I really like, going different generational. He falls in love with a girl called Evie, who's an actress. He tries to rescue Evie from being raped by a gang of stagehands, but he's murdered by them. And he returns a year later, much like Draven, aided by a spirit crow to seek vengeance. So you're kind of going classic crow
Back to
here.
basics.
Yeah.
And this is where I was talking about in that, like, you know, you can actually take the formula and apply it to different eras and
Absolutely.
settings. And with that in mind, I will say that I'll keep that story. I go about 12, and there's a reason I'll put it that low when you bring up some others.
No problem. No problem.
But for me, like, the generational element really comes forth in O'Barr's return to the series, which is Skinning the Wolves in 2013. And in that one, I don't know if you'll mention it or not, so I'm just going to bring it up while it's on my mind. In that one, he essentially has an almost nameless character personify the entire.
I can tell you, I will be
viewership.
mentioning it very shortly.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll save it for then. Let's go.
Okay. Next up, we're French Crow again, volume 4 and 5. This is Alora. This is a 2-part story, Le Sang des Innocents. This is Blood of the Innocent. Alora is an undercover police officer investigating a kind of a drug boss, drug kingpin, and she's murdered during that investigation, and she's revived by the Spirit Crow. She now has to face not only her murderer, but his creation, which is a cyborg that feeds on blood. So yeah, it took another bit of a crazy one again.
Every now and again, someone will come onto the Crow and do something absolutely nutso out of nowhere. I like those elements to it. I don't know if I would ever do it myself if I ever got the chance, but like, for me, whenever you introduce science fiction elements into the Crow, it becomes a little bit
agreed
off.
It doesn't feel right for right here wrongly, but I agree. It doesn't feel as again, I'll use it again, everyman. You know, part of the is you could kind of, insert yourself into that character. And when you start introducing cyborgs and stuff, you're like, oh, well, it's lost that little bit of.
So we'll put that one at 14.
Alora at 14.
Next up, we are into the 5-issue series, Death and Rebirth. And it's Jamie Osterberg. So Osterberg, he's a foreign exchange student. He's studying in Tokyo. His fiance is Haruko. She vanishes along with some other friends, only to return possessed by someone else. Jamie finds out too much and he's then killed. Again, he's resurrected by the power of the Crow with a sword this time that seeks truth. He learns that the possession was caused by a process that can insert a person's mind into another person's body, and that Haruko was taken because of an old, rich, dying woman wanted a new life in Haruko's body. Jamie hunts down those responsible to free the souls of his friends and be reunited with his one true love, even if it means allying himself with Japanese ghosts and demons and following a path of vengeance through different Japanese hells.
Loved it.
Okay.
Absolutely loved that one because, like I said, you can apply the crow to almost any mythology and religion.
Mm.
And having a Japanese character take a walk through the many different hells of Japanese mythology and Asian, Eastern mythology, essentially. For me, as a massive sword mark and a bit of a weeaboo for that kind of shit, holy god, mixing those two worlds and giving it a cyberpunk aesthetic at the same time. Oh, oh. And it was the first book from IDW.
Yes.
It was the first book
It was kind of
that
a soft reboot almost, was it? In a way,
there
am I
was no
correct saying that?
soft about it. This was the license has changed hands through a number of publishers, and for each publisher, it had sat dormant for quite some time after Image
Which
Comics left
boggles
off.
my mind consistently. Sorry, I just
I'll tell you quite honestly, nobody could convince James there was a good idea.
fair enough.
Nobody
I
could.
mean, that's his
No,
right then.
yeah,
I
there was a lack of. I mean, the Crow at Image Comics. I mentioned it early on that I don't really talk about it. It's essentially just Todd McFarlane trying to redo the Crow
Mm.
as a comic, and it's kind of derivative. It's kind of doing the same thing all over again, only this time with color, and it just while it had made for some really wonderful artwork from a couple of different really good artists, it never sat with me that it was essentially a reboot of the Eric Draven story.
yeah,
And that's why it didn't really it didn't do well as far as I know.
it
And
didn't bring anything new and fresh to the table.
no,
You know,
whereas IDW went with the idea that they were going to use established writers, advise, get James in to advise when they could, and in fact convince James to write again and to draw again on these titles. And I think it's led to some of the best Crow work that's been out there. Like
mm.
Death and Rebirth would be a high ranking one for me, so I'll put that at number 6. I'm holding the number 5 spot for something.
I think
You
you may be
currently have
holding it.
Leandria at 5.
You are
You
Move,
currently
move,
have Leandra
move her
at
down,
5.
so you can
move her
move them
down
all
one.
down.
So move Leandra down to 6 and Jamie at 7.
Yep.
Yep. And I think we are now up to that point that you wanted, because we are about to enter into skinning the wolves. And we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about the character only known as the Man.
The best Crow story since the original.
Wow.
Hands down.
So allow me to give our viewers just a little bit of take on it. And please do interject and correct me if any of this is wrong. This is taking place at, again, folks, for the 4th time, this is fucking dark, right? This takes place at a Nazi concentration camp. Okay. The Man, whose name is never revealed. Okay. He's an inmate.
Intentionally.
Yes, he's an inmate who the camp's commandant murders after he basically loses to him in a game of chess. He's murdered.
Here's how it goes. Let me do this.
Yeah, you take it away. Take it away.
This is literally how I sell this comic to people if they're going to read it. That sequence of events goes like this. The book opens, the man arrives at the concentration camp with his family. We all know what that means, but these people don't yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's given his striped pajamas. He's given his yellow star. His family are given the pajamas. His family are given the yellow stars. They are walked up from a guard tower. The commandant points to them and says, him and his family, bring them to me. The commandant says, I will give you one chance to walk out of here with your family. All you have to do is beat me in this game of chess. The man beats him in the game of chess, and the commandant can't believe it. He's never been beaten before by an inmate, ever. And so they play again, and he wins again. And they play again, and he wins again. And as they begin to play, the commandant is becoming more and more and more frustrated. And in order to have the man lose the game to him, he murders his family one by one in front of him.
Oh my
God.
God.
The man refuses to give up the game. The man is then sent to the gas chamber and killed, and essentially comes back in just his striped pajamas from the bottom down, his gaunt appearance because of the nature of concentration camps, and the burn marks on his face, blacking out his eyes. The character is intended to be an embodiment of basically the entire Jewish spirit during that era. And that book captures something that is just, it just brought a whole new magic to it. It's like, I liken it to when in Nightmare on Elm Street, the series, those movies got a little bit out of hand, a little bit crazy, a little bit mental.
Just a touch.
Yeah. And then the original creator, Wes Craven, came back to do one more movie. And that movie was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, hands down the best since the original. And it's very much so the case here, where, you know, James O'Barr, who created The Crow, came back with an idea that would allow it to serialize, meant something, and allow it to continue in a very different way by placing the Crow in different eras in time, as opposed to necessarily just all of these crows existing now, or always having.
Which to me is just such a fantastic idea.
It's brilliant.
It really is.
It's absolutely brilliant. It means you can set a crow anywhere. All you have to have are those basic elements. You can insert it into any mythology in any time. And so for me, I'm going to put this one in at number 4, absolutely without question, because the man might be the best character next to Eric Draven, but I've just had the others in my life longer that I love them.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
That's fair. We're then going to move up to the Crow Curara, which I'm probably No,
I say this because this might be the most heartbreaking one.
Yes, I'm even reading the synopsis and it sounds fucking horrible. And that's saying something for a series this dark. The character is Carrie. So Carrie is a young girl who is murdered by a serial killer who preys on children. So you know exactly what territory you're going into here. She's resurrected by, again, a spirit crow who she calls affectionately Birdie. Now, she's also the only protagonist in the entire Crow series that doesn't personally engage in violence.
This is the thing with Curare. Curare almost is like it's like a haunted detective story. You know, it's very much so. The character of the police detective, who is
Joe Salk.
Joe Salk, he's seeking the killer and essentially being advised by this ghost that he doesn't know if it's real or if it's playing. And it's another take on the, you know, is the crow real or not? Well, is this spirit child that he's seeing real, or is she not, or is she in his head? It takes the perspective and shifts it to another character, as in this form, in this particular story, Carrie is like an ever-present ghost. It really is like an ever-present ghost child who is pure and who is kind and who doesn't want to commit violence or anything of that nature. She just wants justice, but her way of finding justice is directing someone else to seek that justice for her. And that, again, is another brilliant take on it. I'll put her in at number 8. We'll go 8 with that.
Would you like to hear what ones we haven't got yet? What the numbers we haven't got?
No.
Keep going. Okay, no problem. We're into the home straight here. We only have 4 or 5 left. We're up to Pestilence, and the character Salvador. So Salvador is a young boxer in Juarez, Mexico. He basically refuses to take a fall. But he has no problem kind of taking the money. If you guys say he takes the money but doesn't do the job. But the gang then...
You can't get the workers these days, boys.
I'm fucking telling you. I'm telling you, boy. Could you imagine that happening now? Fuck.
Going into business for themselves.
Yeah, fucking hell.
Taking the money and not doing the job.
Jesus Christ, man. Anyway, the gang kills Salvador and his family, and he returns years later. In looking for vengeance again. The final showdown not only reveals an unexpected ally and an equally unexpected truth about his family's murder, but it also pits him against El Santa Muerte, which is death itself.
Again, this was the one of the IDW books that have been published.
Hmm.
I think this was the one misstep.
Okay.
Um, it tried to go little more directly demonic, a little more good versus evil, but it tried to turn it essentially tried to turn it into an action movie, and it had less of a heart than the other stories, if you get me.
When I saw
It
the term
was
death itself, it did seem to take a bit of a
yeah. It's an interesting one, but it falls prey to the same problem that the Crow Wicked Prayer had, in that if you try to pit the Crow against a bigger evil than the
yeah.
Crow itself, then the death of the Crow isn't what's important. The
Yes.
bigger evil is,
Yes.
and that's a superhero comics trap
Mm.
that the Crow doesn't regularly fall into, and it
No,
fell
because I
into it
don't
in that
think it's
book.
correct to view the Crow really as a superhero. I know he has powers and all that stuff, but you wouldn't. I mean, I in my head at least, anti-hero, sure.
Yeah,
Superhero, I don't know. I have a
no,
different definition of that. You know?
exactly. But in superhero comic books, if you want to call it that, or in comic books in general, the old hero trope is to have them go against a big old bad and come out on top. And Pestilence kind of took that approach,
Yeah. Fair
and for
enough.
me, it made it a slightly lesser book. We'll put that at 13, 13 free there,
Fair.
Foxy.
Yep.
We are then
Mm.
up to our final three, and
Wow.
we are going to Memento Mori, which is
Oh.
David Amadio. Uh, he's a Catholic altar boy. He's
Mm-hmm.
killed along with his girlfriend Sarah and dozens of others because it's a terrorist attack in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
He then gets resurrected. He wreaks vengeance on those who committed the atrocity, but wiping out the terrorists does not prove to be the end of the story because the mastermind behind the attack and the reasons for it are still a mystery that he has to solve before he can ultimately rest in peace.
Mm-hmm. And that one in particular for me was interesting in that it allowed a Crow to complete his arc in such a way that he didn't know there was further things to be done.
Right.
So, the Crow always seems to have at least a very direct, and it also calls back to that element of the original Crow, where Eric's powers begin to disappear because he doesn't realize that, or he believes his job is done,
Yeah, he
not
doesn't know that
knowing
it's unfinished
that
yet.
top
Yeah.
dollar, not knowing that top dollar, I cleared that building, son. Don't
Mm.
nothing happen in this city without my say so. Um, you know, and it calls back to that element of it. And for me, it was a pretty good story. I'll stick it in at number 10. Put it in number
Fair
10.
enough.
You got a space at 10?
Yep.
I'm pretty certain, given your knowledge, Kieran, you probably know who the last two are at this rate, but we're into hack and slash.
Mm,
Marcus Greaves. Marcus is a young gay man in 1980s San Francisco.
mm-hmm,
He's murdered along with his lover by
mm-hmm,
a gang of neo-Nazi skinheads.
mm-hmm,
And then he gets resurrected. Not a year later like the other ones, it's decades later he is resurrected to deal with um, a situation of the final character that I'll be mentioning, but I won't mention it
mm-hmm.
here. We'll stick on Marcus Greaves for now.
Well, I'm going to put Marcus in at number 11.
Fair,
There you go,
fair.
Foxy.
And we'll actually be able to sum it up because this one happens in the same one. This is
Yeah,
hack and slash. They're connected. This is
yeah.
Angeles Cerro. Um, Angeles is a graffiti artist who was murdered along with her twin sister.
Mm-hmm,
By her abusive ex-lover, who was a police cadet. So Angeles killed the killer, but fell under the influence of her acquaintance, an urban shaman, Urban DK, who imprisoned
mm-hmm,
her Crow to allow her to continue killing members of the San Francisco police force and political establishment who helped cover up the murder. So this connects with our previous one, Marcus Greaves, as well, and I'm sure Kieran will tell us a little bit more about that.
mm-hmm. Well, it's right. The way to describe this is it's kind of the first kind of shared universe Crow story,
Hmm.
in that one interjects with the other. They tried this once before in the TV series, to have two Crows active and concurrent at the same time. In the TV series, there's actually a situation where Eric Draven encounters another Crow, one who is far more vicious than him, far more bloodthirsty than him and far more willing to go over the line than him. And it makes Eric question whether he's done the right thing. And the same kind of thing happens in this story, in that, you know, the motivations of one crow and the motivations of another kind of come into conflict. And how that's resolved is wonderfully done. I won't spoil it because it's actually a really nice ending. But it's definitely that first real attempt to kind of share universe the crow a little bit, in that, you know, most stories are often segregated or over here or over here or over here, but here's two different crow stories that actually interject and cross over at one point. And it was nice for that experimentation level. We'll stick that one in at number 9.
So there we
That's
go.
Angelus.
Yes.
Is it?
So Foxy,
an honorable mention.
What is our are we getting an honorable mention? What is our current ranking, Foxy?
Okay, so at number 1, Eric Draven. At number 2, Iris Shaw. Number 3, Zane. Number 4, The Man. Number 5, Mark Lung. Number 6, Leandre. Number 7, Jamie. Number 8, Kyrie. Number 9, Angelus. Number 10, David. Number 11, Marcus. Number 12, Vincent. Number 13, Pestilence. And number 14, Allura. So I'm missing 15.
Okay, well, great. Okay, we're going to put in at number 15. He's only new. Actually, do you know what? Push all of those down and put this guy in at number 6. All right.
Ooh.
I don't know why you didn't mention him. From the most recent Crow series, called The Crow Lathe.
It's possible that the list that I was looking at was slightly out of date. I will say that.
It.
So that's on me.
It is a 2020 comic, and it's by Tim Seeley and my good friend Ilias Krias. And I'm sorry if I have pronounced your name wrong, Ilias. I know you're always giving me shit for it, so if you see this, sorry, but I am mentioning your book. The character is called Null Narcos, and he is a circus performer known for acts of such as, you know, hammering nails into his face, hammering
boarding them out,
freak
kind of
show,
thing,
side show kind of stuff. Yeah,
freak show circus performer. Who again is killed and comes back again with that element that I enjoyed from Rob Zombie and Nick Cave's story, with no memory of who he was before, and
so doesn't even realize he's a crow.
Doesn't even realize he's a crow, but has faint memories of the circus life. So comes back into that life, and given that he has the ability to regenerate, is suddenly very, very good and very, very popular within the world of freakish circus performers. And that brings his killers out of the woodwork. It's a class.
That's an interesting take. We haven't really seen, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't really seen a crow using their gifts in that way
on the stage. And this guy is a performer in that ilk and uses that to great advantage.
Very interesting.
Ilias is also known for some of his work on TMNT and a few other things, but it's a top quality one, and it was from another honorable mention is there's a single issue Crow story, and it's a Christmas story, and I believe it's called Hark the Herald. And I won't tell you more than that. Again, it's a nameless crow, but it's just a single issue Crow story on Christmas night called The Crow, Hark the Herald. And it comes from, again, from IDW. IDW are doing...
They seem to be nailing it. They seem to be nailing it from what you're saying. Like
everything they've done, from getting James back involved to getting voices that are, you know, big fans of the stuff that have been shouting on about it for years, going, we have ideas. Here's ideas. Let's have a go with these ideas. And when that happens, when you have people that care about the property and have been looking at the missteps of the property for a very long time, and you get those people to actually create something, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get something that's gold. And for me, The Crow Lathe was definitely one of those books, and The Crow Hark the Herald is also a very good one of those books. I'm impressed with the list, man, though. Like, you threw me on a couple there.
It's a good one. It's a good one. I'm proud. I'm happy with. Well, look, I won't take up any more of your time here. This has been a load of fun.
This is loads of fun for me too.
Talking about, and it's definitely a franchise that I want to get more in depth into. As much as I love the movie, there's so much more to explore there, and I do
There is.
urge any viewers there as well to have a look at some of the ones we've talked about tonight.
Before I go, I'm going to give you one last quick little tour, all right? Because you're going to enjoy this.
Please do.
See up there? There's 3 original pages from issue 1 of The Crow.
Lower your camera a touch. There we go. Oh, look at them.
Over here, we have some Devil's Night Carnage.
Nice.
That is so cool, man.
Over there on that shelf is a James O'Barr original statue. This whole room basically is what I call my crow's nest.
Nice.
And of course, my T-shirt.
That's so cool, man.
So yeah, have a little tour there.
That's so cool.
Thank you for asking me to do this, man.
No,
this has been
absolutely loads of fun. We'd love to have you back at some point if you are available. No, we know you are very, very, very busy, man. In fact, is there anything you would like to promote or anywhere people can get in touch with you at the moment?
You can get in touch with me on Instagram at Kieran Marcantonio. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at Kieran Mark, MARC. Or if you look up, I'm currently working on, I'll say what I'm working on. I'm working on Vikings Valhalla at the moment as a featured performer. And so if you look up the hashtag Vikings Valhalla, you'll find a lot of what I'm posting about up there, because that's really all I'm talking about these days. But in fairness, it's taken up a lot of my time. So.
To be fair. Well, look, Kieran Marcantonio, thank you so much for joining us. Foxy, thank you for helping us with your valuable list making abilities.
You beautiful silver fox.
Yes,
that's right. And we will be back down the line with more special guests, more nerdy things. If you liked what you saw, please do subscribe to the channel down below. Leave a comment, say what you'd like to see next or what guest you would like us to have next. Check out the Nerds Are Us channel. You'll find everything from comics to video games and wrestling. All of that is touched on in one of our many, many shows there. And with that said, thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.